fellow Americans and people all over the world. Americans had roles with all sides and with another side, then A through Z, with the World Trade Center attack and with Connecticut, intercities and intra-cities through time, intercampuses and intra-campuses, at and next to the campus's locations. I never saw a Joe DeMoro at Millwoods Park in my life. He was on the side of it one time. He was planting evidences near one of multiple educators and leaders of kids and their family members, influenced by people associated with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and co-defendants of his, and people with their educators. They have been planting evidences on off campuses, intrust cities. Now, these are also names involved with Russians and Americans with fire departments together and with medical campuses. And their families run into like Hartford Hospital's campus, and they take all sides of issues where they're simultaneously just totally fabricating audio and video transcripts and conversations between people at locations, and they're mixing that with people who are actually in the same place, but that's all that's true. And they're just changing and faking everything, putting fake ties, fake nature ties to people. And they have done this as collusion with all natures of crime scenes. At the same time, all sides of criminal and civil cases, their lawyers, their family members, their sources, in the courts, their family members, the sources, same thing, same sequence shifts, planting the same natures of federal evidence, kind of fake motivations, increasingly real ones right there to hide behind by the breaching method that keeps out the outcome /S. The news at the same time to prevent the all kinds of natures of people that fake and change what others say when they mention predicate acts. And then they search what people to say to change and fake things. They get away with it too because I caught them with predicate acts at each campus I went to. Not just against me. This is a method against everyone. And it's very subtle. But it's overtly recorded because like a Joshua Julian, many tied to a Joshua Julian, are involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, with all natures of campuses. But like for example, UConn has a whole bunch of people with foreign and domestic military involved with where and how it's relative. That at A through Z, the suburbs were designed before America's founders were born. You guys are keep speaking about you have sides of issues about LGBTQ encounters. You guys are collusions with FBI director and his co-defendants, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, proven child abusers, leaders of kids, years apart. There were times U/S of roles and names involved with enforcing that first, then and now, still connected with more involved. Because of this breaching method signed you guys to roles within A through Z, where as systems tactical terror from one unabridged in reception of why and how we are a species body of individual bodies and other species bodies of individual bodies are being projected by the system that communicates. It shows us revelations, shows us answers, shows us that it's not our body that invented how and why other species bodies have two eyes. They have qualities, aspects in nature, just like humanity, distinctly but non-distinctly and simultaneously, but also per that further / hyper simultaneous. That is neither us nor them, but it is everything anyway, including us and them. That's why and how the species bodies are manifest. That's why, in other words, our suburbs were designed. They look almost exactly like in America and Russia and Ukraine. And then there are, I don't know if they have the suburban / urban like America, but there's proofs that they do, because they do have the straight up urban too, with the people stacked on totally tactically systems, tactical ulterior from nature's, also positive onto itself. Clearer than day, our founders communicated in Native, not just as the Native American ones, which Native Americans are 3/3 of our founders. Before our founders were even born, because every native population was already forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to argue with each other about what to do, about where and how. More and more preservation of syntax. It means to use syntax and names and differences properly. What was is increasingly forbid and capable of being, because of how we have been taking the systems tactically denatured. Now, with only means to cause positive value nature, progressions, action natures, even for people to feed themselves, having to self value rules with systems tactical terror the natures. Think about the energy it must take for a little kid to go from the top of one of those buildings or any level of it at one of those buildings in the background in rap videos, like of New York City. Go to school, and you have to come back. And you know, it's a nature of peace that is not even in the suburbs, but no way there. Even in the suburbs, I mean, the suburbs, it's a theater that was designed before America's founders were born. The only reason this has gotten away with, where it appears to be debatable, is because our founders' communications and other countries' founders' communications, they have been replaced. The scientific value of the human fact true nature breaching method that is true always, that has been replaced. They have been using their differences interbranch, including black-white and sexual. There are black-white female judges involved with some KKK themed, Confederate flag themed, Latino themed, Italian themed, Korean themed, as ones like there's a fire department next to Trinity College. I don't know their names. Increasingly, people tied to the name Aiello and tomorrow, and people involved all along Route 3 with the branches of government individually grouped and together involved with criminally foreign influence uses, also tactically delusions wrought uses of the Connecticut judicial branch offices and the Connecticut corrections offices, with the names further involved with Russians and Ukrainian and their doctors involved with mail crimes, wire crimes, all kinds of criminal foreign influence and tactical delusions. And we're getting, in other words, you guys aren't debating you guys have been interviewed by U.S. bloggers properly, Mr. Lavrov and Judge Napolitano, and U.S. bloggers. Campuses A through Z have remained abridged. England itself does not remember properly the history of English. English was revealed with other ancient languages, having been led by the distinct identity of hyper-invisible but still discernible. That is why that's the body of what we are appreciating, where we are appreciating, for example, just with the participle natures, the present participle and the past participle. We are appreciating here how we need hyper-additional more than one name than a verb, for a verb than just the verb. The predicate, no, is a main verb. And note the predicate act of the law. Note how wire crimes and mail crimes could be criminally foreign influenced ones and roles as predicate acts. Note those predicate acts can be used to discern criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments, not just negative treatments, roles. With use/us of that originally and still, where and how actually, so even the suburbs, like we've been mowing the grass so long with this landscape theater set up before America's founders were born, with slavery entrenched in northern colonies, southern colonies. I don't know if you know that, Mr. Lavrov, because right through American schools, they have replaced with James Madison and the founders behind him, his plan communicated to us. The first thing was that we were supposed to refer to them plural as James Madison singular in his plan. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan and to counter extort and force at key locations, people to break the laws of the internationally monitored conversations, then and still with suits and ties counters, postures of integrity as a certain type of victim slash hyper victim that came through campuses and exceptions at locations A through Z. Every single place the human species body has a body standing since semi-ancient times. As styles, needs, and natures being have been influenced by having been used remotely too, blaming and having blamed on other things, others ourselves, things that the breaching method caused, and nature's demonstrations of that, and nature's demonstrations of roles with that, and its uses of that instead, blamed on other things, others ourselves, as styles. Increasingly, in other words, with motivations, use tactically ulterior definitions of evaluations by estimations by the value of motivations through systems tactical ulterior from natures, using exceptions and exception nature fake, valuing them having been used fake. So I don't know why Russians and Americans have roles with fire campuses running into medical campuses to hide live aggressions. But they did that the second time at Hartford Hospital, when three times they forced me there for medical evaluation. 2 times they made things up to hide what I caught them doing the first time. When the first time I forced people to call the police without telling them why. And I knew I was going to catch them, and they knew I was going to catch them, so they faked conversations with me. They even had to fake it when I was a kid through the news, and then to pretend that was real in the past, because they've been doing that using the right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie. They have roles with all kinds of natures of identity, theft, fraud, slanders, and counters to it. Even with Judge Napolitano, with the identity theft counters. In other words, there are readings of statutes and precedents where you guys leave out exceptions and exception nature, even if it's for legitimate reasons we don't know about. Even that was used remotely by the breaching method. It's why the interbranch have been forging and switching names. The Britain Superior Court, like for example, in 1986 or 1987 was the first time I met or knew who was a Tom Peruta, who I barely know him. They tried to make a fake exception outside of campus. He was in my 6th grade class. Already my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade class. Like my 4th grade class is with people increasingly tied to a South Cibiello and his neighbors are increasingly involved with predicate acts against me. I don't even know them. With people from other areas that want and need me to say that so they can change what I say or say nothing and say we do it other ways. Has something to do increasingly with people at the judicial branch offices and conjunctions to it, like Wethersfield Pizza House. Increasingly has people further with the Wethersfield town offices and with Board of Education meetings and people at Central Connecticut State University involved with FBI Director Robert Luskin and judges and prosecutors and their family members involved at the same time with overt criminal enterprises and private ones on off Hangdog Lane, 2 Route Highway and its conjunctions. In other words, that's why one of the reasons they have the posts blocked, the ability to comment on the Board of Education meetings. They have rules with criminal enterprises, with people, with families, with the leaders of schools, not legitimately. In other words, even when they have acting professors, they have roles with uses of the departments at campuses A through Z, individually grouped in together, being used remotely, haven't been used self-valued. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw, individually grouped in together. Where and how with relativity to the replaced communications of nature too, with black pupils, whites of eyes, with us having the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time, right where we could discern the identity of all space / existence as apart with that, as a distinct identity of volume. That is no other one, but it is all volumes at the same time anyway. And then further its way positive onto itself here, or it is forced from here, lethal IDs, or space nature transfer. There are proofs that this is how the ancients appreciated that as a scientific value. There are proofs that with English, excuse me, and with all the languages, in other words, each letter spells out a word, and each word spells out a sentence simultaneously / hyper simultaneously. It's more complicated than that, but in other words, our short words are prevented when we make short words proper regarding predicate acts against ourselves and others, let alone if we regarding predicate acts methods. Whole predicate act methods, plural, are recorded in the singular use of it. And that's not complicated at all to discern relative to how we have black people's whites of eyes. And that having been left out from such serious subjects like slavery. Hyper additionally, one of the things that, it is true always as is a predicate acts of effects method. And all exceptions show that it come with demonstrations. The same thing where it's not a predicate acts of effects method. It was a criminal insidiousness nature delivery system method. And the motivations, even if they were hyper additional, they were led by that which forced all roles with that sustained since some ancient times. Names A through Z, differences A through Z, and then hyper additionally as locations A through Z, hyper additionally, because we are quality of diffusion of that which is greater than all parts of ourselves, even our species body and all of the species bodies and the rest of Earth and its water and differences like air. At the same time, we can ignore the system. We could ignore our own special difference, Earth's special difference. But so it is forced from here. It will stay equally to positive and negative to all parts of space / existence. But Earth has a concentrated identity of relationship to itself, where all selves are itself. For example, more reason why we should not ignore how we are so many ways demonstrated to by nature itself, being and having been apart from its hyper-native pure course. Nature itself, with our founders, left us cipher to decipher as president / chief. That wasn't just to respect Native Americans. That's because Native Americans are 3 natures of our founders. As every Native American, every human is hyper-native. But we were forced to systems A through Z, tactical terrier. The natives are being tortured and rewarded if they entertain, descriptions of their history, leaving out what came first properly described. How come we ever had the phrase criminal insidiousness, criminally foreign influenced, involved with the subject treatments through history? The databases were criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions raw, names associated with them too. And valuing roles with the breaching method, keeping even worse at all locations where the people not even allowed to be educated. And it shows them that they could hide behind that better than that. Meanwhile, predicate acts with max facts method / S roles is the worst thing that we have to count, no matter who you are. No one's safe until we address it. In other words, we have suburbs that were designed for a torture, extortion, slavery method. All natures of debate with it They have nature shows that there are means inherent, active, and progressive. There are quality aspects in factory nature that come with demonstrations of the same thing. These prisons too, and the of Connecticut corrections offices and the judicial branch offices, there have been collusions with the prisons and with the campuses like Central Connecticut State University that educate them, involve all kinds of natures of organized crime, methods of them, all kinds of natures of predicate acts with facts, methods, needs, and natures. In other words, they have people stealing kids, things like that. And then what? That person's only going to be capable of being a criminal in the future. No. And being labeled a criminal. Meanwhile, in many ways, they are heroes. Even the people in New York City in the background, living in those buildings in the background of rap videos. The whole species wants to help that, but not through these abridged systems that keep other things other themselves. I believe fake science is one of the things true always. That's where about that right now. Not one real person used passions and emotions with sciences at the same time for it. Use passions and emotions, not leaving out the slightest detail. See, instead, everyone uses it through the breaching method system. Use passions and emotions to force the details left out, the order of the finite, the difference of that. No one could even deal with that. No one could deal with exception nature. Like what are witch trials about? You don't leave out how slavery was entrenched distinctly against everyone. Northern colonies, southern colonies. Black, too. Right through the Civil War, northern colonies, southern colonies were still entrenched with the breaching methods roles with slavery because it only allowed that. Otherwise, it sends that body trying to counter it, including if it was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. That's why the suits and ties, counters, and exceptions, when they fight, they're keeping the same sustained shell gang. They have the transsexual places next to Trinity College and next to Central Connecticut State University, involved with people involved with, I've never been in them, but they're involved with people with murders, with the intelligence families that work at and next to the campuses, their family members. They're involved in interagencies, inter branches. The branches have never been the independent branches. They have to cover up things because this breaching method you use, you guys, since you guys were kids, with fact sheet nature, quality aspects, nature of collusion, increasingly incapable of having discerned what nature had you capable of discerning and speaking at each age. Regarding that breaching method, distinctly having been sustained against Native Americans through people that had distinctly had it sustained against themselves, already having been taken from the hyper-native pure way that appreciates the ground, its identity and relationship to itself. In our contemplation of it, the rest of it, unabridged, as the Constitution unabridged, and that's why and how we need rights that are we have rights that are too numerous to have to list. Let alone our Native American citizens, because they are also our founders. There are three, so each country had at one point native people that remembered how to use short words and the revelations that come by following what is true always, not leaving out the slightest sequence shifts. Appreciating, like, for example, how those three parts of time are grouped that we know are true always, including like the value of the seasons that are not even here yet, even if they never get here, with that which is active group now that we know. It's true always as that which is the body that is true always. We know the extent of it from the past. We know there's a part of the past that we know is true always, but we don't know about it. We know there are group troops active now that are true that we don't know about. We know beyond the seasons and things like that. I mean, that we do know about the past, about the future that now before it comes here. But there's also that portion of time that there's more of it that we don't know about. So there are those three ports groups that we don't know about. There's the three parts that do know about. Groups. See, the Trinity has to do with this: cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall / S. It is 5 ways, grouped distinctly from 3 ways. And the difference of that is shown to us. Where some ways it is that way. Like that way is 3 ways grouped. And 3 ways we don't know about. And there are proofs that in nature showing us there are 3 other identities of hyper invisible but still discernible that go with this with juxtaposition. Where its identity relationship to itself, and only increasing value of that coming through all these hyper additional identities is used by itself to make more and more identity of forever nature that is further positive onto itself. And where and how Earth has a special difference to its complete identity. And we ignore this, it forces that difference from here, it forces the least of IDs. Everyone has self-value roles with this because everyone has had self-value roles with systems abridged. All natures of wealth, too. This is not even on the records. Even the people with more wealth than the people on the records with wealth. This is complete fact, human nature, quality aspect. This is complete possession / hyper possession. Like, for example, Mr. Lavrov is saying we need to make things like infrastructure. We have to make some kind of business or do something because the locations, areas, and states are like, okay, let's speak about practical reason. Let's speak about economics. And everyone left out the breaching methods roles, forcing that. There is another name than A through Z. Even if it's not real, it's more probable and practical to theorize that, let alone to convict that. And we can't blame it. And we could learn to appreciate properly how sickly distinctly every single country is a victim, sickly distinctly. We can't equally come out of it that way properly. We have a hyper unnatural, not just unnatural impositions. And some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness. Had one science been honest, that would have been revealed. That principal truth. Some things are only natural as criminal insidiousness. Nature itself shows us this. Pantheism is the nature of industry we need. We need to put the world onto paper, onto the conversation with you guys. And give you guys yourselves the right to speak about things you're directed not to speak about. Like all kinds of direction silence for things that aren't even classified. Just because just trying to keep peaceful energy generation needed no, because we're stacked on the breaching method, tactically denatured suburbs, let alone the suburban / urban and the straight up urban. Needing food and resources from other locations, no, water in plastic bottles. We're in some ancient trap. That same one perfected against Europeans, and then them through, not just them, through in Africa, not just them, through the Native Americans. There are proofs that the same ones that took down. There are proofs that there were mountains taken down in Africa or Egypt. Or relative to why Egypt was trying to put that. There are proofs that Egypt was trying to put back up a mountain And it didn't come through nature, countries A through Z, but it came through a method that forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded countries A through Z, names A through Z, of location area states to blame other things other than themselves for what the breaching method caused. Because they're proof that it was going to get caught. And it knew that it was going to get caught for something, so it had to do things to get other things to others themselves blamed and people reacting before it would get caught. Also, relative to how proofs of it. Let me say someone's writing. I was going to say, how are you? So I was just speaking this about Sergey Lavrov is Judge Napolitano says he's probably one of the most intelligent international diplomats. He's from Russia. And Judge Napolitano went to Russia recently. And, for example, the world almost ended per Scott Ritter, who's one of the world intelligence experts who goes on Judge Napolitano's Judging Freedom podcast or YouTube channels, live streams. I didn't say you were serving all sides. So there's a Thomas Peruta. I barely know him. That tried to make a big exception one time when I was in 6th grade. Increasingly, people when I was in 4th and 5th grade are people that were put in fake and changed communications with me by people increasingly involved with body jumping spots. And I recorded them involved with a principal upskirt nature. I didn't know about the upskirt nature things. But even after that was proven, he was involved with worse child abuses. And there were more foreign and domestic medical families. A whole bunch of families from Hartford Hospital's Institute of Living have been planting evidences at and between each of the campuses and with names next to them through time, with a whole bunch of different countries at the same time. And they have Russians, Ukraine, and their doctors also forced, where mental health evaluations are forced at hospitals, where judges and prosecutors and their family members have increasingly been involved with various natures of organized crimes and predicate acts with facts, mail and wire crime acts and methods, and delusions, and speaking fake things in databases, forging doctors' names. Increasingly, they have collusions with all kinds of people on off the state corrections offices and off the state judicial branch offices. And spots next to it are just driving by. The difference of that was it's used remotely too, in ways even they don't understand, because of how they have all locations, areas, and states have been used remotely, hyper criminally foreign influenced. Like, for example, with the breaching method made, all the different colonial countries rolls with more than 13 colonies, entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies, different possessions, but they sickly, non-distinctly too had roles with slavery, northern colonies, southern colonies. And then America's founders were born. And they didn't have free speech because everyone was being measured and maintained. Everyone was vaccinated, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. But rather than having that understood by everyone, they have it replaced. And roles with that used to measure and maintain. So people go into jobs or titles and they say, well, that's not my fault. And they rely on different experts and things. This measures and maintains. There's no one leading the helm of practical reason, to use Immanuel Kant's phrase. That we don't have, any legitimate syntax in nature regarding economic values or values. The Constitution unabridged, and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, is a policy, and we're supposed to make it a foreign policy. But we have that abridged. We have natures of industries that are criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought. We have the needs for it, built upon by a breaching method, the torture, extortion, slavery method. Who failed? See, people came through campuses that have been abridged. The subject treatments leave out the answers that nature has been showing us. Means to do, like, in other words, the WFSB, Connecticut's Channel 3 News, they attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others. And Connecticut interbranch names have been switching and forging names. And they, with the news, they other news locations too have been planting evidences at corners of streets. And kids years ago, in 1987, they confessed and recorded one time. Something about a Peruta family with the same corner of the street involved with people associated with involved with Paul Kelly. He didn't even go to my grammar school. He's with the Air Force and his neighbors, involved with judges and prosecutors and people from other areas that have been planting evidences in my area. And as roles with police forging and switching names, in courts doing that. New Britain Superior Court has a whole bunch of people with Russia, Ukraine, intercities involved with them, and intra-cities. Also with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, before the World Trade Center attack. They had roles with Connecticut courts, intercities and intra-cities, intercampuses and intra-campuses, and with names next to relative body dumping spots, even if they made any or all of them up. And because they were relative time to use / S of that. Collusions. So there are all kinds of differences, rackets, roles, where they have their differences. Oh, this person's a diplomat. How many countries are there? You know, no one's paying attention. They're just keeping all locations standing criminal and seditious natures. And standing needs to use lies and use illusions or truths insidiously, or value others doing that and having done that. And just increasingly at all locations. The difference of that, the difference of the guilt with that too is used remotely by the breaching method, measuring and maintaining its roles left out. Even if that's just still not being acted, it is more probable and practical to observe. It's demonstrable relative to where and how we have these predicates. Like, for example, nature itself shows us a predicate acts with facts method. Criminal foreign influences were behind replacing what nature communicates with black people's whites of eyes, or pretending it's debatable, including if people believe that they think it's debatable. Then they're going to have delusions too, demonstrable. We have the mental health care experts have been putting fake transcripts in databases. Then they're showed they need to hide that by a breaching method. So then they hide that the way the breaching method shows them they need to do that. Increasingly, names tied to databases are involved with insidious acting at locations and just putting fake all kinds of natures of identity, theft, frauds, and slanders, roles, methods, also because of how and why. Nature itself is showing us that's one of the things, 3 ways manifest that the human fact attribute nature breaching method was value as. The human fact attribute nature breaching method, that was one of the scientific values. As one of the things true always, that those were value as, those laws that were entrenched before America's founders were born and through their lifetimes because the breaching method forced it. And through how with use / S of it rolls with what no one discerned, but to an extent. This is discernible. The only reason it hasn't been discerned by everyone It's because everyone jumps in and changes and fakes what people say when they use short words properly. And so they keep all talking heads to hide behind and counters to that as collusions. It's recorded. The same ones involved with the more World Trade Center predicate acts. So Joe Aiello and his father, and his sister, and people with intimate ties to them have roles with the former Mayor Gold and with a fire department next to Harvard Hospital. I mean, with spots next to Harvard Hospital and Buckley High School, but also with a fire department next to Trinity College. With people that know my name, I don't know their name. As one of the ones involved with a whole bunch of people with Russians in Ukraine, Koreans, Italians, involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones. All at the same time with their educators too. And in other words, and then their neighbors get pulled in because they're trying to make people. They're lying about what they think about what people say, what they feel about people, why their motivations are on a mass scale, with a right to use the right to lie was used where they don't have the right to lie. You have all kinds of identities of the law that can't defend themselves without changing, without self-valuing everyone attached to fake and changed communications. And that's what's really happening too here. We had means. There used to be worms every time it would rain. They would be in the puddles. They walk into the bodies of water and they would feed fish that are no longer there. Whole ecosystem, different types of fish, frogs. But when it rains, all the bugs would go away from the surface of the water. And fish can't eat it. There are less bugs in the sky. The birds, the bats, they can't find the bugs. So, but now all of a sudden it's raining, so the worms are coming out from the soil. See, nature shows us it's teaching about positive and negative the way we know. It's teaching us about identity the way we know. But it's doing it further hyper-additionally in ways we are offensively prevented free speech. Interbranch have their differences used by themselves and or used by the others involved with them. Like the branches of government individually grouped it together. On a mass scale, they use crime methods like putting a charge with no writing and then just sticking fake things in databases, putting fake and screening the rest of the names involved in their collusions at the location, /S, everywhere the species body is. They're also guilty. Which trials are about, even if they're made up. They're about that slavery method where the differences of the guilt of overt criminal enterprises, private ones. The people that were pretending to be able, capable of speaking for science and integrity. The news. At the same time, the insidiousness of people A through Z. Otherwise, all collusion /S at the same time with those differences too. Screening worse. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, including if that body was a majority of people, including if it was everyone. Any grouping of countries that comes entertaining the quality aspects and fact-driven nature of the locations, states, and areas. Of locations, areas, and states, anywhere the species body is. And they can't defend that and overcome how nature will continually demonstrate negative value, nature progressions, acts, and natures. There aren't even worms in the soil anymore. We've been taking away the earth. The soil needs to eat too. We've been taking the grass away. That landscape theater, designed to cause negative value, nature progressions, acts, and nature, the only means to cause positive value, nature progressions, acts, and nature, more and more to self-value. Needs to be a part into value, means to cause positive value, nature progressions only as criminal and seditious natures of them. Needs to mean food and resources, increasingly ulterior from the hypernative way. increasingly making those natures, even the Earth's nature is changing. In other words, the worms are important. And that's what nature wants us to discern. How when it rains, the bugs are no longer on the surface of the water, so the worms are walking into the bodies of water. They just walk right into the ponds, puddles, in the rain, and the birds too. They're no longer there. Okay, thank you, people. Have a great night. In other words, everyone fails because, for example, so they have roles. The breaching method, the nature itself shows us about difference. We have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. Nature shows us that a breaching method be assigned communications for itself with black and white. The colors that are the ones that we have as the same color eyes. When how its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that is showing us about difference. Again, but in other words, so a whole bunch of people at Hartford Hospital have roles with people who said they're Ukraine and Russian, and they're doctors who are ones that have been planting evidences intercities with police departments and people on my street involved with the confessions of the police over the phone. Ones who also attached me to fake conversations with the police and at the police station as identity theft, frauds and slander too, no, and collusions, way worse. When I was a kid and I was an adult too. So the Wethersfield police can't be trusted. It would be criminally foreign influence on my part to pretend they're trustable. So it's important now too that we have this conversation on YouTube, because also they faked and changed the digital evidences and they hid what was actually recorded and confirmed digitally. The police forums and whiting forensics increasingly, when I was a kid and I was an adult, they increasingly have people tied to them who have been putting predicate acts at campuses and with names also on all sides of my house, planting evidences with police forums, families involved too, but also a whole bunch of different countries and the hyper foreign. But to discern this, we have to have mandated law followed, because I don't even know all their names yet. And they have their patients and criminals involved with them. In other words, on a mass scale, in other words, increasingly too, people involved with WFSB and Fox Connecticut News and WTNH have collusions with all kinds of natures of organized crimes, with people involved with like wire and mail crimes, and all kind with what is it called, domestic violence, and their roles with harassment too, because they're increasingly putting sequence shifts, cover-ups, and collusions with predicate acts. That way, they're hiding how increasingly in all natures of investigators, and identities of intelligence, the adults of their families and the kids, the difference of their collusions is also used remotely. All kinds of natures of identity theft, fraud, slanders, roles that them and the foreign have together, and they don't even either they like each other or not. They don't know each other because you guys have been, if you knew each other, you would know about the black people's whites of eyes is inseparable from the subject of slavery, which is inseparable from what was, demonstrably a human factor nature breaching method from off campuses, influenced on off campuses, hyper additional collusions with itself. And more, the names of the people of the sciences can't defend themselves and their nature and afford to be, let alone to protract. Short words with convictions proper, let alone convictions with guilt. And we need to keep the breaching method apart with anyone making guilt, leaving out the breaching method they're going to get it wrong. Exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. Exactly as has been only allowed to transpire. So I don't know Tom Peruta, but only then they made one exception when I was a kid, and that was a criminally foreign influence by people involved with the World Trade Center attack and mayors. Increasingly, a former mayor Gold is involved with abusers of kids of various natures and abuses of the kids of the leaders of the kids. And the difference of that are the other kids, that then they also have abuses of them through that. All that is recorded. Increasingly, people involved with the Wethersfield government access YouTube channel has collusion/S with people with the Board of Education and people who have been speaking in the meetings that I don't even know. In other words, I'm just saying with their locations and their syntax and some of their names, though, like Michael Emmett was and is one of the ones involved with a former mayor, a former police chief, Cintron, and more people with the name Cololo, like a Phil Cololo, is further involved with the Bob Chase and some Mendez police with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, including a Leahy family involved, that faked conversations with me through the mail, and I can't get a response. There's a Judge Killian who's also been speaking fake things into records of digital crimes and sexual and medical crimes with the principal upskirt nature and his roles with Wethersfield Police and Hartford Police families, Newington Police families, Rocky Hill Police families, with the people with the name Coloro, also, and tomorrow, also involved with home break-ins through the years, has something to do with their roles of corners of streets near me. And so, Police Chief Cintron, his family, and their intimate ties through time, at least one other police chief too, with the same house/S, involved with a whole bunch of people, with all kinds of federal evidences, crimes, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and wire crimes with them, false police reports with them, and their educators. They're putting fake natures of ties to people increasingly. So we need to get them on paper, one name in sequence. A whole bunch of people from Harvard Hospital have a whole bunch of different fire departments involved with them and people that live next to them. Eric Burgess lives next to a fire department in West Hartford, involved with the park next to it, involved with a whole bunch of people tied to a Joseph Dennis, and that park involved with the World Trade Center attack, before the World Trade Center and after it. That was confirmed by Joseph Dennis. Sought me out as a stranger, as a kid, and then as an adult, timed to pretend other, make fake exceptions of knowing me, and tactically delusions raw. All kinds of drugs and medicines crimes, with some tactically delusions raw, criminally foreign influenced people involved with mayors and his roles with a former mayor Gold, and his educators are further involved with child abusers, leaders of Kids First Forest. And John Dennis too, a whole bunch of people foreign and domestic, all along Route 175, per Joseph Dennis too, which from Wethersfield locations, founding locations to where the witch trials place next to the Webb House, then now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. All from there, all along there to Central Connecticut State University and all sides of Central Connecticut State University are people that acted for others to record fake things as their roles with predicate acts with facts. Eric Jensen and recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed it has roles with two people with the name Carone and people associated with with a former mayor Gold and people along Two-Rod Highway and Hangdog Lane and its conjunctions, involved increasingly with foreign and domestic, like state police families, and my neighbors involved with them planting evidences. Also with the Mike Roberts, has educators involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me. I never had a class with Mike Roberts. And they have roles with Middlesex Community College, with the FBI, and state police families and foreign overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and child abusers, leaders of the kids' first forest, with the names they had roles with that. And that were ones that were years apart too, as the ones that were roles with the forcing the principal obscure nature, with the worst I recorded him involved with. And the people that brought it up, like a Robert Rodriguez, brought it up to me in his confessions. He also brought up the confessed name Scalora involved with it. And with names, there's also, others. There are people that next to Hartford Hospital recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed that Scalora is involved with drugs and medicines, crimes with little kids, sexual criminal enterprises, and people involved with the body jumping spots and murders involved, including that girl reportedly dragged to her death, even if that was made up. There was a Mark Violet and a Mike Violet involved with some intercultural, KKK theme, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, criminal enterprise theme with the military. Involved with also with this Joshua Julian on the Facebook page of the Principal Obscure Nature as one of the ones that forced that. And he recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles of predicate acts with facts with the police chiefs retired and their intimate ties, involved with him planting evidence on all sides of my house with them and a whole bunch of other people. Kevin Dillon's increasingly involved with them. A whole bunch of legal people, too, at Hartford Hospital involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime there, with the same house/S, tied to child abusers, leaders of years, kids years apart they had roles with. They're changing and faking what's digitally recorded. And these are judges and prosecutors and their family members with the same house. Collusions with them speaking fake things in records and delusions. There's a Judge Killian involved with that. And his roles, but the identity theft fraud things about tactically delusions raw and changing digital evidences and speaking fake things in records, sequence shifts. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence, Judge Napolitano, please. And the Leahy family before that. 3 times they forced me to mental evaluation. 2 times they made things up to cover up. I was only there for 3 days. And and I didn't speak to anyone. One day I was there. 3 doctors were walking down the hall. I went like this because I already knew the people that there. I saw they were tied to the Kevin Dillon. Increasingly, people tied to Kevin Dillon have been sticking fake things in databases about me. Increasingly, with their roles with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and judges and prosecutors and their family members involved with predicate acts with the same house, involved increasingly with people involved with home break-ins. These are increasingly a Judge Smith and a Judge Killian spoke fake things in databases with them. There's a Subby Bajeri who also involved with them through time with identity theft fraud things with his educators too. Never had a class with him. Increasingly, as ones involved with all sides of the also with Jerry McGraw, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed collusions with intelligence, foreign and domestic, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and his educators involved with people near me and people associated with the Joshua Stryker. I never saw him around. I don't know Josh Stryker. Joshua Stryker was pretending other too at Trinity College. A whole bunch of people at Trinity College involved with my neighbors and people tied to them at all sides of and at the community center of Weathersfield, involved with the World Trade Center attack, including with people with the name Scalora, and all sides with their difference of their roles. And they won't get on paper. These are also people involved with Sandy Hook campuses, with child offenders and people associated with Adam Lanza's medical associated with him. Hartford Hospital has roles with all kinds of natures of organized crimes. They need to get on paper and get me someone to respond to me. I've been begging for years to get a response. I can't get one person on the paper. You got people that fake conversations with me, like this Leahy family too, with Brian Silver, and also with the judge, with other judges and prosecutors, with the British Superior Court, involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, with a Brian Silver, also with Connecticut's District Court, involved with a whole bunch of people with former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and this Brian Silver. Please, Judge Napolitano and Mr. Lavrov. These are also people involved with the spots, the sexual and other natures of different cliques next to the campuses, intercities that are connected and as ones with collusions with the intelligence families on my street through time and their educators, putting fake things in databases, fake ties, fake natures of ties to me. They should have learned not to talk to strangers, especially to frame strangers. And these are interbranch roles with all sides of criminal and civil cases already. They're already criminally foreign influence uses of a prison. Their collusions with prisons too, as the ones with the corrections officers and judicial branch officers use criminally foreign influence. They should fear God, hide and plot. They should do what's right and get that on paper, one name and sequence. Stop leaking because you guys brought up the ground as one of the things you do, as one of the things that connects you guys, like the corners of streets along Route 175, increasingly tied to people who are involved with the schools, involved with predicate acts with fax methods clearer than day. You guys are spending, wasting money. You guys are involved with all kinds of scams and organized crimes with people involved with sociology and mental health care. You also have all kinds of delusions involved with your minds and your fact-true nature quality aspects relative to the fake news, the news too, criminally foreign influence news. We're gonna address this and all kinds of rights to lie, where they have the youngest kids increasingly building upon predicate acts with facts in databases. Increasingly, they abuse their own kids too because they have other investigators investigating things. The kid like a Leahy family's got their own daughter's picture involved with the people with more obscure pictures with the FBI too, and the judges and prosecutors involved with some sexual and medical offenders and digital crime, male crimes with them, and medicines crimes. So you should fear God now to hide and plot. I rap a lot. Don't let them take my Facebook page, Judge Napolitano. Please, Sergey Lavrov. There are Russians and Americans in Ukraine at the same time. They're educators and they're doctors. Harvard Hospital is going to make confessions. We're going to get them on paper. You ask them why I can't get a response. You get them on paper. Get me off the fake conversation with the news too. Please, WFSB. Please do what's right because so I have to keep leaking more. You're leaking more with your silence too. Get them on paper, one name and sequence. Then with the intelligence at your location involved with that. And with a fake conversation with me, with you guys, and with me, with others that you guys pretended to. And about the World Trade Center attack. And when I caught you forcing to prove in any way afterwards, child abuser principle, recorded with more wire and mail crime and digital crimes with the police forms in different departments with the same house/S with extended families involved with all kinds of natures of bad things with kids, not legitimate with the agencies. There are a whole bunch of people involved with the name Scalora. Well, let's get them on paper. Someone respond for the Connecticut. Get them on paper and respond on here. Not like a fake punk. So FBI has a Joshua Julian, has a Ray Cololo recorded with a whole bunch of other people, and with the Anthony Agman involved with medical and sexual offenders of kids, with judges and prosecutors, and they're reading criminally foreign influence readings of statutes cover-ups. They're already used remotely with that. They need to pretend they don't realize. They have rules of wire crime acts, methods, other natures of organized crime acts, and then they're on top of that. They're writing fake things, using the right to lie where they don't have the right to lie. On Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. There are more obscure pictures on Twitter with the FBI associated with people with the name Ian. Increasingly, as people involved with the making everyone look like they communicated, as people involved with the different police forms too, and the difference of that, as the ones involved with that at the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists too. Attach me to fake conversation with you about the World Trade Center attack. Americans, you guys get behind me. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. You don't fake such things. Vaccines. Let's get the Connecticut interbranch on paper, one name and sequence. Judge Napolitano, please. And the judicial branch officers' names and next to it involved. And the corrections officers and names and next to it involved increasingly. There are people tied to Lance Cuddy. I never saw him on the inside of a campus in my life, Lance Cuddy. I don't know where he went to schools. Lance Cuddy is increasingly involved with more men and women involved with sexual and medical offenders of kids, and that next to the corrections officers, and with people along Park Street, with a Daryl Sullivan, with Alina's Pizza, and his roles with the FBI and other countries, with child offenders of various natures, of organized crime, with people at Central Connecticut State University on the sides of it involved. In other words, let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. Fear.